Hello and welcome back to the Maxine Inspector. In this segment we'll look at yet another aspect of debugging in the Maxine Research Virtual Machine. We've previously looked at examining the contents of registers and examining the contents of the stack for each thread. And in this segment we'll look at how you can set breakpoints and execute the virtual machine. In my session here I have an instance of the inspector running the Maxine Research Virtual Machine, and it's located right now at the very entry to legitimate Java code. So we have simply the startup thread going on here, and you'll see the instruction pointer pointing at the machine code location that we're at. This is really the first case where we're really executing Java in the startup sequence. We can use the debugging buttons across the top here to set a breakpoint. So for example, I can select a line of code and then move up here to the button for toggling the breakpoint, and that sets a machine code breakpoint at that location, indicated by the box over here in the tag column. There's a separate view that lists all the currently existing breakpoints, and we'll look over here and you'll see that that entry has appeared. Okay, this is let's get the full view. It's a target code breakpoint, machine code. It's enabled. Here's the information about the method and the location. You can also specify conditions for these breakpoints. Having created that breakpoint, we can then go back over and use the resume button, and we can actually execute the machine. And now you'll see the instruction pointer is at the breakpoint. In situations where a thread is at one of the breakpoints, you'll see that the breakpoint inspector now also includes the additional information that primordial thread number 1 is at this breakpoint. We can set breakpoints for code that we haven't seen yet in the viewer by a different technique. We'll go to a menu item here and we'll say break in at a method entry, for example. This is a common way we'll do this. And we have our choice. Let's start with a compiled method. What we'll do now is we'll look through all the compiled code that we know about in the running virtual machine, and we'll do a name match on it. So what I'd like to do is stop the first time we hit our runtime compiler. The JIT compiler is our fast compiler designed to produce code very, very quickly at runtime when it hasn't been compiled into the boot image. So I'll type JITCOM, and you'll see that the name matching has produced a number of classes that contain compiled code. Let's pick this one right here. And now we'll see the methods. Which method do we want? I think we'll pick the very first one as well. And we'll say set a breakpoint at that entry. Having set that breakpoint, you'll notice now that an entry for it does appear in the breakpoint list. It's the one on the first row. And at the same time, as we created the breakpoint, the code viewer jumped to that method, disassembled the machine code for us, and showed us that there is a breakpoint there. At this point we can run until we hit that breakpoint, so let's click resume, and you'll see that the machine instruction pointer is now there. If we roll over the tag at this instruction, we'll see that we're at stack frame 0, and in fact that's confirmed if we go over to the stack view, where we'll see that we're now located at stack frame 0. We're actually in a different thread. As part of the startup sequence, a number of additional threads are created, and we're now in main thread number 2. And just to confirm, we'll go over to the breakpoint list, and sure enough, it tells us that thread number 2 is located at this breakpoint. Notice also when we set breakpoints, an option for setting a method entry for a method on the class path. This is something that we haven't loaded yet. We may not know very much about it, but we can go out and examine it. So in this case, we know that there's something called hello world out on our class path unloaded, and sure enough it's located. We'll select that and we'll examine that and observe that it has 2 methods, and so I'm going to set a breakpoint at main in hello world. Okay, this is a symbolic breakpoint, or a bytecode breakpoint if you will, and that's indicated in our breakpoint summary with the letter B at the entry to this particular method. We're still working on the debugging commands that operate at the bytecode level, and we eventually intend to add breakpoint instructions at the source code level, but those aren't ready yet. And that concludes this segment on breakpoints, both bytecode breakpoints and machine code breakpoints in the Maxine Inspector. Thanks for watching.